So this debate is about Abrego Garcia. I have a very strong opinion on this. I think the Supreme Court ruling is quite clear, but apparently Abrego Garcia is an illegal deportation lie. So let's see how the student defends this point.
Charlie Kirk, it's really you, man. I've been following you since George Floyd, that whole thing went down. I want to preface my question by saying I voted for Donald Trump, but when students say that Donald Trump wants to rule like a fascist and then deports people like Abrego Garcia without due process, I wanted to ask you, how can you call yourself an American patriot when the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that the deportation was unlawful and that they are ordered to facilitate his return and haven't?
How can I call myself an American patriot? Because a MS-13 gang member, wife-beating, child-abusing foreign citizen was sent back to his country of origin? Pretty easily. That's what America...
He is convicted of none of those, by the way. And the fact of the matter is the Supreme Court, 9-0, said that the deportation to El Salvador was a refoulement, which means it put him in direct danger. They could deport him elsewhere. They could deport him to, Venezuela. That would have not violated the court order. However, you still have to do an analysis for a refoulement. You still have to make sure it's safe, and you have to get consent from the country to go there. So that's exactly what the ruling said. It was precisely what the kid just said. It was a violation of a court order. It was illegal. He was ordered to not be removed to El Salvador because it was unsafe for him. That's the law.
American patriots do. Secondly, the Supreme Court did not say that. They said 9-0 that there was an administrative error, that he could have been sent to any country except El Salvador. The fact was not that it was wrong that he was deported.
No. The Supreme Court, that is true. He could be sent elsewhere besides El Salvador. But the administrative error was illegal. It violated a legal court order in 2019 that withheld his removal to El Salvador. So you can't say it wasn't illegal, even if it was an accident. On the other hand, you can't just send him anywhere you want. You still need to have due process because you still have to make sure the place you're sending him is safe. We cannot refoul people. That is against U.S. law. We cannot send them into places that are unsafe. Also, when you deport people, you need consent from the other country, like I just said. It's not as simple as we can send him anywhere except El Salvador. And the Supreme Court did say it violated the court order. You cannot say this was not illegal, right? It's very simple.
It was just the fact that he was deported to the one country you could not be deported to. Finally, I don't understand the emphasis and the concern and the hyper-pathological fixation on why a foreign citizen...
So he just admitted it was illegal. The one country he could not be deported to was his country of origin. That changes nothing about the fact it was illegal. It changes nothing about the fact that he faced danger in El Salvador. And the Supreme Court specifically said he should be returned to the United States to ameliorate this administrative mistake that flagrantly broke a law.
Was a gang member, gets all of the attention of the American left, while you, the American people, have been ignored by them over the last 30 years. It's creepy and it's bizarre.
There are a lot of criticisms to be made that we have been ignored, but at the end of the day, number one, the 14th Amendment grants due process.
Wrong.
Yes, it does.
Not under the Alien Enemies Act. That's incorrect. Alien Enemies Act does not give you the same due process rights. Number one.
Okay.
Number two, it was still underway while that happened. Number two, the Supreme Court ruled in 2019 under the Expedited Removal Act that you do not get full due process rights if you're within 100 miles of the border or 14 days of entry.
So he's talking about two different things right there, and I'll break them both down. So expedited removal. What rights do you have under expedited removal? You have the right to claim a credible fear interview, which has been shut down under the Trump administration. But besides that, with Trump, he's expanding that to 2 years and anywhere inside the country. So that brings up a lot of issues that get more complex as we go on. So there could be people who might need to benefit from a full immigration court proceeding because that gives them the opportunity to have their removal withheld, as Abrego Garcia did. It also gives them the opportunity to have a voluntary removal program, which will facilitate their return to the United States should they want to assume a green card at some point. But he's correct. You do not have full due process rights under expedited removal, but expedited removal was previously extremely small. Now it's extremely wide. It went from 2 weeks to 2 years. Second, Alien Enemies Act. Supreme Court just ruled 7-2. You do need some kind of status due process to determine if the person at question is actually part of the group that's invading the country. The president does not have the right to go to anyone and deport them under the Alien Enemies Act within 24 hours because they have to prove through some process, due process, that that person is a part of the group that has been labeled an invader of the United States of America. So that is the due process that is required. That's why deportations of Venezuelans has been ordered off. That this happened after this interview, to be fair.
Do you think that we should have 21 million trials for all the illegals that the Democrats let in?
To take each point,
yes, we should. Except if they came in the last 2 weeks and are within 100 miles of the border, I think there should be an expedited process to return them immediately if they evaded Border Patrol. Besides that, they should all have due process because we have to have some kind of court to determine if their deportation would violate the principles of non-refoulement that we signed onto in the 1967 protocol. We also should determine if they have an asylum case or if they qualify for voluntary removal, as I just said. So there's lots of things that immigration court provides that's being stripped away right now, and these provisions are super important. We can't just send people to countries where they're going to be unsafe. That's why we need due process to make sure that we're making the right decision for each of the 21 million illegal immigrants. Now, I would contest that there are not 21 million illegal immigrants. Current estimations are around 12 to 15 million. Most of them, or half of them, came in on a documented basis, which means they came in on a visa and overstayed. And they were not let in by Democrats. They were let in by many administrations over the years. Take the Bush administration. But let in, we don't let anyone in. That's a falsehood. We do not let anyone evade Border Patrol. We let people stay here while their asylum case is pending because that is the safest option for them, and they also happen to be very productive as far as working for our economy goes, and they happen to commit very low rates of crime because they're incentivized not to commit crimes, because that would nuke their asylum case and they would get deported immediately and get detained immediately.
One, the Alien Enemies Act can only be invoked if there's, I believe, reason to suspect war, or if there's...
Yes, we've been invaded the last 4 years, so yes.
You can't just say that.
Yes, you can.
A court has...
Tren de Abrego and MS-13 invaded this country the last 4 years.
By the way, I have no problem with using the Alien Enemies Act on Tren de Abrego. I have seriously no problem with that. We just have to make sure that the people we are saying are Tren de Abrego or MS-13 are actually a part of those groups, and that's the problem with Abrego Garcia.
You have material proof to show that. What's your next point?
Okay, that has to be proven in a court of law, but my next point is...
No, it does not. You could do it and then you prove it. The point is the president has full authority to invoke the AEA.
You can do it and then you can prove it?
Yes, that's correct. The commander, for example, the commander-in-chief has unilateral war powers acts within 90 days to be able to defend the country with the Asian invasion or incursion or war. For example, the president doesn't have to go in front of a judge if all of a sudden he wants to defend ourselves against Saddam Hussein or whomever, North Korea attacking the country. The president is the commander-in-chief who can act unilaterally under Article 2 to defend our country against invasion. You don't have
Yeah, the courts will figure that out, but I have a feeling that they won't have an issue with the use of the act. They're going to have an issue with status due process and how the act is being rushed, essentially.
to go to a court first to get permission to act as commander-in-chief. That's insane.
Okay. I'm not sure if that's true, but I'll take that for the case.
Of course it's true,
For the case of argument, the Supreme Court still ruled that they have to facilitate his return. They have not. Why haven't they?
They asked. It's El Salvador. They said no.
The Supreme Court says they have to
They
facilitate
don't
his
control El
return.
Salvador. I'm sorry. They don't control El Salvador.
So we can send people to El Salvador, but we can't bring them back?
Yes, we don't control El Salvador.
But
It's
we
not
can-
our...
Okay, so can you at least admit that this is a massive mistake? That we deported someone to a place that is extremely dangerous, that a court ordered them specifically not to be deported to? Like, that's a horrible mistake. It doesn't matter what you think that person did. It doesn't matter if they're a criminal. We cannot do that. We can't put them into these El Salvadorian torture facilities.
country.
So we can send people there?
You mean, wait, hold on. You mean we sent an El Salvadorian back to El Salvador?
Against the law.
Wrong.
There
It was an administrative error. It was not against the law. It's not against the
there
law.
was a 2019.
It was an administrative error that directly violated a court order. Courts say what the law is. Does he not know what the law is? Does he not know what a court is? Like, look at the 2019 court order. The Supreme Court, in their decision, said this was unlawful because it broke a law. It's so simple. and he just lies about it. That's why it's hard to debate this guy, because he'll just lie about it, and you have no way to fact check him because you're not going to get close to him and like kind of do a good faith research on a phone, and he has a crowd of people behind you yelling who know nothing for themselves.
Court ruling under Dave M. Jones that he has a withholding of...
They could go to any country except El Salvador. We acknowledge it was the one country he should not have...
Great, so it's illegal. Like, I don't understand. It was El Salvador was the worst thing that could have happened, and he was deported there because that was his country of origin. If he was not to be deported to his country of origin, we would have to take extra steps to determine that he would be safe in those countries, even though he would be homeless because he has no settlement there. Also, you have to get consent from those countries to accept him. So it's not just, it could have been any country, but we just happened to do the one that was worse for him, and that was specifically said to be withholden, specifically said to be dangerous for him. Like, that's not a justification.
And sent to. It was not an illegal deportation. The judge said, this is your final warning, Mr. Garcia. You could be scooped up at any time and sent to any country except El Salvador. So
that's true. It was not. Deporting Abrego Garcia is not illegal for the end until the end of time. That's not what the court order said. It said he would be unsafe if he went to El Salvador, and we broke that. And if you were to be deported elsewhere, we would have to go through extra steps that Charlie Kirk is not mentioning in order to determine that that would also not be unlawful.
So, ironically, if we would have sent him to the Congo, Gitmo, North Korea, it would have been perfectly fine, which would have actually been foreign prisons. We actually did him the accommodation of him.
Great, so he doesn't respect the principle of non-refoulement at all. If you don't know, non-refoulement is a principle of the 1967 protocol and the 1950s Refugee Convention that says that we cannot send people, no matter how bad they are, into places where they will be in direct danger or will be tortured. So it would be equally as unlawful to send him to North Korea against US law. That's just incredibly wrong, what he just said.